All right, guys, we're in the middle of this mini series, stories that I wish would have made it into the book or the movie Black Hawk Down, but they didn't. And I have been waiting 30 years to have this conversation in public with the bravest man that I've ever seen in combat. His name is Brad Paulsen. And I'm going to talk honestly about Brad's role on the city streets of Somalia and how he kept me alive. And by the way, parents, if your children are listening while this episode is going on, you might want to ask them to go into another room, because just as a disclaimer, this conversation is going to get bloody. There's no way around having a conversation about what Brad did on those city streets without getting bloody. Join me in this episode as I talk to the bravest single man I've ever seen in combat, my friend, Brad Paulsen.
These stories of triumph over adversity will help you handle your toughest days in life and become unbeatable.
Before I get into the conversation with Brad, I want to remind you that the Solomon Foundation is sponsoring this episode. And these guys have been around for a while. They're helping the local church grow, and they do it by giving you an excellent return while you make an eternal impact. If you want to know more about the Solomon Foundation, just check them out at thesolomonfoundation.org. Now here's my very honest conversation with this incredible warrior, Brad Paulsen. Hey, Brad. Wow, it is great to see you, man. I literally haven't seen you in about 29 and a half years. Thanks for being on this episode with me.
Yeah, it's been too long.
It has. You and I have talked a lot on the phone. We've texted a bunch back and forth, but this is the first time that I've been able to see your face. So everybody who's watching this on YouTube gets a chance to see both of our faces too.
Yeah, hey.
All right, man. So what I'm going to do with you is something that I should have done 29 years ago. I want to go down memory lane with you. And what we're doing, as the listener knows, is we're doing conversations that I think personally, these stories should have been in Black Hawk Down instead of my story. And Brad, I'm just going to say something to you right up front, right out of the gate. I have been to combat all over the world over many, many years. And to this day, in my mind, you are the bravest man I've ever seen in a firefight. No exception.
Hey, what you do the best you can.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
I thought I was doing what I thought that I was trained to do. I was just trying to. I didn't feel that way though at all, man.
I
was
didn't feel
scared.
that way.
I was scared crapless.
Yeah, you and me and everybody around us were too. We're going to get into the middle of this fight in Mogadishu that becomes the book and the movie Black Hawk Down. But in order for me to back up this statement, and I literally mean it, right after receiving an award for Somalia, I looked at some people and said, and I pointed your way and I said, that's the bravest man I've ever seen in my life. And the ability to lead and to fight with men like you in Somalia, it will, I'll go to my grave as that being one of my greatest privileges in life.
I will too.
All right. So I need people to understand why I consider your actions that night so incredible. And in order to do that, I want them to know where you're at in your military career when when we're doing this normal everyday training in Texas and get a call to stop what we're doing and fly over to North Carolina and get ready to go to Somalia. So tell everybody when you joined the Army, how long you had been in the Army when we started training up for Somalia.
Man, this is I have like estimates. How about that?
Sure.
I can estimate it. I had I waited a year after I was out of high school to join the Army, and I just didn't like working on drywall and the things I was doing. I wanted to go to college, so joined the Army to do that. And I didn't join normally with a Ranger contract. I joined with just an open infantry contract.
Yeah, me too.
And then sometime during basic training, right after, like AIT, something like that, one of my buddies was cleaning the first sergeant's office, saw the list. He's like, "You know where you're going to go when you graduate?" I'm like, "Where?" He's like, "South Korea." I'm like, "How do I not do that?
Yeah,
How do I?" They
right.
said, "Hey, here." A couple of my buddies had Ranger contracts, so they're like, call your recruiter and get sign up as a Ranger. So I did. Anyhow, long story short, yeah. So I got the battalion, and it was a wake up. I mean,
Yeah, it's
you're
rough,
there. It's
man.
like, where am
Oh,
I?
it's
What am I
rough.
doing here?
Wow. Yeah.
I can't match what's around me. This is not. It ain't me. And you just give it your best. You try to try not to be seen, try not to be noticed when you're a private. Other than if they ask for volunteers, I'd always be the idiot. I'll do it. I'll
Yeah.
do it.
Sure.
So, but anyhow, I did okay though as a ranger. I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't fall out anything, and I listened and I learned, and but when we were doing that, I was probably it was sometime in '92 is when I joined, and I don't remember when I got there. I was probably in battalion for about
Yeah.
maybe a year,
Maybe a year, right?
maybe,
You were a
and
private first class when we were in
yeah, I
Somalia,
got
right?
promoted, and that pissed some people off, dude.
Yeah.
I got my private first class, and they're still PB2s, and they've been there longer than me. They're like, "What the heck?" I'm like, "I don't know, dude." But anyhow, so I was just getting comfortable enough to know what I was doing as a private, but I was not I didn't know how to be a turret gunner
Sure.
in Somalia,
Yeah.
dude. I did.
Well, what got handed to all of us getting ready to go to Somalia, none of us were trained up and prepared for. You went straight to weapons platoon when you showed up to the battalion or to the company. Is that right?
Yeah, and the good thing about that, I got I had been attached to all the different platoons on
Yeah.
deployments.
Right.
Like in England, I think I was with second platoon maybe,
Uh huh.
and in Panama I was with your platoon.
Yeah.
I got to meet Ruiz and all them
Yeah.
because Phipps knew everybody, so I got to meet people. I got to meet Joyce down there. I got to
Yeah.
meet, so that was neat being in one platoon. That was a good thing about it. I got attached to different platoons and got to meet
Yeah.
people
Well,
and see what they did.
I just got done doing an interview last week with Matt Eversman, and Matt and I were talking about James Joyce, and we were both talking about how much we respected the guy. As you remember, when we went on this training mission in Panama, Joyce was one of my team leaders. I loved the guy to death. When we heard, you and I heard that he was killed KIA in Somalia, man, that was a punch in the gut right there. All of them were
It was that
Ruiz, all of them.
my roommate Cavaco was my roommate when I
Yeah.
got to the battalion. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I
He was
didn't.
in mortars, and I was in his room. Me and him were roommates the whole time I was there. And then Kowaleski he was a private that came into my squad. I trained him how to be a gunner.
And if you're listening right now, the names that we're listing off are the names of the Rangers that were killed in action. And Brad is telling you he was right there learning from or living with all of the guys that got killed in action, almost every one
It
of
was
them.
painful, man. That
Yeah.
was a hard deal to. And Smith is the only one that I don't. I probably did meet him, but I don't
Yeah.
remember having conversations or getting to know him or anything. He's the one that I knew the least out of the guys. And then not long after Somalia, I took over his team.
Yeah.
So I was in his room. I'm
Uh
seeing
huh.
reading his name on all
Right.
the squad equipment. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Why? What did I do to deserve this, man? Uh,
I joined the Army like you. I didn't have a Ranger contract. I really wanted one, but I couldn't get one from the recruiter. There weren't any available. So, like you, I went to infantry training and to airborne school. And in airborne school, I volunteered to serve in the Ranger Regiment. I'm asking you to describe when you joined the Army because I'm trying to demonstrate something. I don't know if you're aware of this, man. I don't know if I told you this, but by the time I got to Somalia, I had been in the Ranger Regiment for more than for 6 years. I had been in combat already in Panama and in Desert Storm with the Ranger Regiment. So by the time we got off of the airplanes that first night, came under mortar fire that first night, this is not the first time that I've been shot at, not the first time that I've been under enemy fire. But for you, you've been in the Army for about a year, maybe a year and a half by the time we get to Somalia. And for you, everything is brand new, right?
yeah, yeah. It was a wake up call, but we train for that kind of thing. I mean, how much can you really
Yeah.
train for when it's happening? It's a different thing. But I was lucky because Alfred Lamb. I mean, come on, dude.
Yeah.
He
Right.
was my platoon
When,
platoon sergeant in weapons. When he took that over, he tuned us up.
yeah.
We were pretty tight. We were as ready as a private that never saw combat could be. That guy had us ready as we could be.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Hats off to that guy.
I worked with Al Lamb before he went to BCO with us, and I have the absolute greatest respect for him before the fight and much more after.
Yeah,
I asked you about weapons platoon because I want people to understand. Our battalion went away to do some training in Texas. We were over there for a couple of weeks. You're doing things with your platoon. I'm doing things with my platoon. And then in the middle of nowhere, out of the blue, stop what you're doing. Everybody get on airplanes, just a handful of the
yeah,
battalion, and go to North Carolina. And that's when you and I, literally, that's when you and I kind of meet together for the first time, right?
yeah, yeah.
With no notice, no preparation. I don't
No,
know
no.
you,
It's
you don't know
well,
me, and now
I
we're on Humvees
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
figure this thing out
Like
together.
this is what you got. Is what's around you. This is what you count on. But I was thankful to have you and Pila. I mean, that guy. He kept me so comfortable over there. He was
Yeah,
always asking, "Is there anything you're wondering? Do you need any?" He was always there to help guide me and give me confidence. That guy was a stud, man.
I
Nothing
agree.
but respect.
On our first mission that we did together, when we went to the K4 traffic circle and kind of held that circle down while they were taking down the compound just about a block away, I watched you and Pila working with each other. You on top of the Humvee, Pila with his machine gun right next to the vehicles. And I watched you guys working with each other. And honestly, I was really impressed by you. I was really impressed by Pila.
That
But
was
what
all him, dude.
yeah,
It was
but
all him.
I was going to say what was most impressive is I didn't tell him to do that. He just naturally took the initiative,
He
like any
did. He
great
was a
ranger
leader.
would, and
He
and
was a
did that.
leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just get right into it. We are thrown into Somalia. I've never done missions on vehicles before. I don't even know how to drive a vehicle. I don't know how to operate vehicles. We get just a couple of days train up in North Carolina before we jump on these transport aircraft and go to Somalia. And you've never really operated a 50 cal before getting over there. Is that
No,
right?
I mean I'd used one on a range. Here, take turns shooting this,
Yeah.
but I wasn't a 50 cal gunner. But trust me, once they said this is your job, I learned that thing
Yeah.
quick, and I got pretty good on it.
I'm gonna tell everybody how good you got on it. One of the first things that we did over there is went out to the desert. Remember that little 55-gallon drums that we set up way out in the desert
For the
outside of
snipers
town?
to
Yeah,
practice on, and I was like, okay,
yeah.
guys.
I watched you on a free gun, no, traversing equipment. I watched you putting rounds on those drums in within one short burst. And I was like,
Yeah,
this guy who's never fired a 50 cal, never really trained on a 50 cal, is now
yeah.
faster and more accurate than anybody that I've ever seen who's worked on it for years.
I was pretty good on it. I liked that gun. It was a fun. It took you had to use your whole body.
Yeah.
I mean, I did wrestling and stuff, in school, and you had to really you lean into that thing, and your whole body had to
You
took it. That's a tough gun, man.
yeah,
It's a
you gotta
heavy beast.
you gotta control that gun or that gun's gonna
Yeah, and
control you.
I was a little light little dude, but I could do it.
Yeah.
I handled that pretty well. I was impressed with myself on that.
You and I worked the system out. I don't know if you remembered it, where I would have some tracer rounds. I would put tracer rounds on where I wanted you to shoot the 50 cal. And within one short burst, you would be able to move the 50 cal onto my tracer rounds within a matter of seconds. I've never
The
seen
50 cal, it's so long. It's pretty easy to shoot, man. It's a long. You just aim it and shoot, man.
I'm telling you right now, I have never seen anybody before or since that can is better with a 50 cal than you are. And you've never trained on it in your life before we get over there.
No, we did a little bit though. We trained a little before we went over. We got to go on some ranges in North
Yeah,
Carolina
a
and
couple
stuff.
of days before we went over
Yeah,
there. I
yeah, a
mean,
couple.
no real training
That's
on it.
all it takes. So I put every ounce of effort into it, dude. I tried my best. My hardest.
It blew me away. um, we got so good, you and I, that I got to the point I had no question, no matter where we were at, what we were doing. If I put a couple of tracer rounds on a target, you would be on that target within a matter of seconds. And I've never seen that before, Brad. Never seen it since, man.
I don't even remember most of that. So,
Well, okay, before we get to the big fight on October 3rd and 4th, do you remember the target that we went on and we stopped at the reviewing stand with the vehicles? Everybody else hit Radio Mogadishu, and we get into a firefight from three different directions at the same time. Do you remember this?
and dude, yeah, I remember exactly because in my head, I'm thinking, what dumb kid is lighting off firecrackers, dude? What kind of kid would do that in front of us? What's going on? And then I start hearing the rounds whipping by me, and a couple RPGs went right by me and went off right behind us, and I'm like, okay, that's not
Yeah.
firecrackers. So we turned on them. We took care of that pretty quick because we had all those jeeps and all those guns. Just oh, that was it was like the 4th of July
That
going off right there.
the reason I bring that up is because if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of the first real time we're under kind of accurate enemy fire. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the most intense fire we were under. There was plenty of people popping rounds at us. You could hear them zinging by,
Yeah, down the
but
streets.
that was real close, and it was pretty intense.
Um,
But 10th Mountain was the guys that were shooting at us. They had guys. Me and Bonnet talked to one of them guys a couple days
yeah,
later, and they asked him, "Hey, did you guys see what happened the other night?" They're like, we saw these guys shooting at each other, so we start shooting at them.
I
They're like, next thing you know, there's a machine gun rounds hitting the sandbags 10 feet in front of us, and RPGs landing behind us by like 10 feet. Me and Bonnet had them
yeah.
boxed in, and then the guys are like, ceasefire. I stopped. I was like, what? What? Yeah, that could have been bad,
It
man.
could have been bad, and by God's grace, we didn't kill anybody in that American base that was firing at us.
Yeah,
And
that
for
would
the
have been bad.
listener,
But I got really close, dude.
yeah, for the
Oh,
listener, that is not that uncommon, especially when you have different units that are not aware of what each other are doing. But Bonnet is in the vehicle behind us. Bonnet has an automatic grenade launcher, 40 millimeter automatic grenade launcher, and you have the 50 caliber machine gun. By the way, this gun is almost 100 years old. It had been manufactured 100 years earlier when we were in Somalia, and you and Bonnet worked together seamlessly. It was awesome.
yeah, he was good on that thing. There was most guys had never shot that gun. I
Yeah.
don't think I ever shot it.
I had to
And
remind Bonnet, it takes about 10 meters to arm that grenade, but once it goes off, it sends shrapnel everywhere. So be very careful where you're aiming that thing, man.
yeah, I don't think he ever hit me, so it's
So
all good.
back to the reviewing stand. We have the vehicles parked. We're waiting for the helicopters and everybody who went in by air to take down the target, and then they're going to move to us, or we'll move the vehicles to them. And while we're parked, from behind, we get hit with enemy fire while there's a small ranger team going behind us to investigate. That's when you guys spun around and started returning fire from behind, and you did it in a matter of seconds. Do you know that one of the little bird pilots that was flying in the air that day came up to me as soon as we got back to the base, and he said, Jeff, you should have seen it from the air. It was spectacular. There's one or two bad guys by the reviewing stand with AK 47s, and then when they fire, all of a sudden 50 weapons from the Humvees just unload on them all at the same time with
Yeah,
pinpoint accuracy. He said, it was, man, I wish I had a video of it. It was amazing.
yeah, I heard something about that.
And then, because we're taking fire from behind, that fire wakes up an American supply base that you're talking about. They start shooting at us from the opposite direction. Now we're getting hit from both the left and the
Yeah,
right side.
and they had to be like a half mile
Yeah.
away. They were pretty far away, but
And then while all of that is going on, all of a sudden the Somalis start to shoot at us from the hospital, literally using the hospital and the rules of warfare and the Geneva Convention. They're breaking their own rules and shooting at us from the hospital from a third site.
I know. And that I wasn't going to return. I didn't want to because well, it's a hospital. And with the birds flying around at that distance, I if I some of my rounds could have skipped off a building
Yeah.
and hit one of the helicopters. I'm like, I can't. But that's where Cavaco impressed the crap out of me,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
The free gunning that 240 or the Mark 19, he's just like bam, 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 bam,
And
bam, bam, right across the
puts them
window
all
with
over
the
the
guy shooting
hospital.
at us.
Yep.
He just hit it with just one little. I was like, how do you do that, dude?
Yeah, I was going to say that hospital's 1,000 yards away when he does
Yeah,
that, and he's putting rounds right
he's
on
just
the
pop, pop,
windows.
pop
Yep,
right on it, man.
it's
We
incredible.
took that guy out.
So
Oh,
now we're getting hit from 3 different directions at once. Everybody is scrambling to try to return fire left, right, and behind us. And in front of us is our assaulters still taking the target down. And I watched you, Brad. You were totally calm. You absolutely blew me away. Man, I was blown away by what I saw.
yeah, I don't. I just you just react. You just follow your training. You know, try to do what you think is right and what you're supposed to, and that's all I did.
Yeah, well, you did it, and you did it, and that alone blew me away. So now, by the time we get ready to roll out on October 3rd and 4th, at this point, you can shoot better than anybody that I've seen before. You've been in a firefight and you've remained calm. The 2 questions that I have as a combat leader about my guys in combat, and everybody's answered those 2 questions, but you have absolutely blown me away on both occasions. And we roll out in the city streets and we get to the target building. If you remember, our 2 vehicles, me and then Danny Mitchell behind us, we turned a half a block too early
Dude, that
on
was scary.
on the way to the
I'm
target.
looking
Yeah,
around. I'm like, hold on, wait a second. I'm like, I can't keep us. I can't cover us. I can't keep us safe here. There was people everywhere.
I still remember how it felt personally. I still remember how everybody in the vehicle felt when we turned half a block early and got just down the road, and all of a sudden, every eye and every
They're
person
like,
started
what are
looking at these
you?
two
Hello.
Humvees. Yeah, and we became the easiest target. And I said to Danny, we made a mistake. We need to get out of here. We need to get out of here really fast. We get to I'm just kind of narrating until we get to the part that I really want people to hear about you. We get to our little holding position, waiting for the call to come up, pick up the assault force, get the bad guys, and get out of there. And that's when I get a message from Colonel McKnight that Todd Blackburn is seriously wounded. I have to move on foot to get to Mike Steele's position just to find out where Blackburn is. But then we start to fight our way up to Blackburn. And I don't know if you remember this. This may be something, I don't think I've talked to anybody about this in 30 years. But as we're fighting our way just to get to Blackburn, who's barely holding on to life, that position, Blackburn's position, is under some pretty intense fire from a dude in a tree. Do you remember this?
I I remember a dude in a tree from one of the other times we went
Yeah.
out. I don't remember this guy in a tree.
Anyway, so we pull up to that intersection and I see the guy in the tree. He's totally hidden by the tree and he's putting really, really effective fire on Matt Eversman's position and especially on Todd Blackburn. And I pull the vehicle up and I say, hey, Brad, I want you to just go ahead and take out that tree. Your 50 cal will go through the tree and into the guy behind the tree. So just go ahead and take out the tree so that we can get this thing done and get Blackburn loaded up. And within a matter of 2 or 3 rounds, boom, you're on the tree and the target goes silent. And no more problems from the tree anymore. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I didn't remember all that, but hey, it's all right.
Then we get up to Blackburn's position. We put him on this cargo Humvee, and now it's me in the Humvee with you on top, riding on that 50 cal machine gun. It's Bonnet on top of Danny Mitchell's Humvee in the back, and then Blackburn on a Humvee in the middle. And these 3 Humvees are going to make our way back to the surgeon, drop off Blackburn. And then the plan was for us, I don't know if I had a chance to tell you this, but the plan was for us to turn right back around, get out there and help the exfil and help get the assault force back to the airfield. Did I even have a chance to explain the whole plan to you before we grabbed Blackburn and started rolling?
I was along for the ride. I was
Yeah.
just going where you took me, man.
I have had a chance to talk to audiences all over the world for the last 20 or 30 years. And what I tell them is when we drove down that narrow alleyway and turned onto Hallwadig Road, that big sand road. What happened on that road, what you did on that road, but what happened on that road, I've never seen anything, never experienced anything like it before, never experienced anything like it since then. I'd like to hear it from your perspective. Tell everybody what the gunfire was like when we turned the corner and we start getting hit from every single building, every window, every doorway, everywhere.
It's one of the things that I don't have like very good memory of.
Uh-huh.
I know that it happened. I know it was bad. The only thing that I can really remember of it is that noise was everywhere. And when you're up there, the bullets going by you, you can hear them.
Yeah.
You
They're
can
going
almost
right by
some of
your
it. You
head.
can almost feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel the wind by your face. I mean, it's like which way where do you go?
Right.
How do you protect against this? You just pick a side and start trying to get targets and then your back is completely
Yeah.
exposed. You're getting stuff going by you as you're shooting this way. Stuff's coming from behind you. So if you turn around, then your back is exposed
Yeah.
again. There's no good way, and that's one thing about those turrets. There was no cover and no
That's right.
concealment up there, dude.
Yeah.
We're up at a wall, and you guys are looking out. You see a wall. Well, I see over that wall. I see down block.
Yeah.
I see up all these. I'm not saying you guys didn't. You guys had the same kind of fire coming, but I could just see more of it.
Yeah.
It was a very exposed position, man. Those turrets were not fun.
When I say Humvees, people think Iraq and armored Humvees. Back in those days, it was fiberglass, and you're right. You're standing, half of your body is above the Humvee, riding this 50 cal machine gun, and you're totally exposed from the waist up,
Yep.
with absolutely no protection around you. And like you said, if you turn the gun to the left, you're getting hit from the rear, right, and the front. If you turn it to the
Yeah.
right, you're getting hit from 3 other directions.
It was not a fun place to be, dude.
I was watching you free gun on the streets as we were trying to take Blackburn back, and you were all over the place. And that's when I said, hey, Brad, take the left side of the Humvee, because Dominic Pilla also had that Mag 58 machine gun. And I told
Yeah.
Pilla, take your machine gun, face the right side of the Humvee. And Brad, I don't think I've told you, I watched what happened next. I couldn't get my gun to the right of the vehicle as fast as Pilla could, because he was already, patrolling that side. But there was a guy hiding down the side of the road. He was under the bushes. He was right next to our Humvees when we got right next to him. And he took his AK-47 and pointed it right at your back. And that's the exact moment that Dominic Pilla shot him and hit him immediately and killed him before he could hit you in the back. But that's also the exact moment that Pilla took a round in the forehead and fell over in the lap of Tim Moynihan.
Yeah, I didn't know that happened until way down the street, man.
Yeah.
So
do you? I don't know if you even had the words for it. I don't know how much of this you even remember, but can you describe what it was like when Moynihan starts to scream that Pilla's dead? Because that head wound was
that's when I
massive.
heard. That's when I knew. I didn't know anything was going on like that, and I remember hearing, because I didn't have earplugs and I wanted to be able to hear you guys.
Nor did I.
Not the smartest thing to do,
Yeah.
but hey, and I remember hearing you. I remembered hearing you. I could hear you guys going back and forth, and I stopped for a second, listen, because it had the shooting had died
Yeah.
down on us a little bit at this point. So I was kind of still trying to keep an eye out, but I heard you call back. Are you sure? Did you check for a pulse? And he said, yes, Sergeant. I checked. He's dead. I was like, the fuck.
Yeah.
Sorry about the.
All good, man.
And then and then I just remembered telling myself, and I'm trying to keep us safe, and that was a mess of a drive back, dude.
Yeah, it was.
After that, I don't even want to get into that, but I just kept telling myself, don't look back, don't look back.
Don't look down
You
at
don't want to
Dominic
see
Pilla
this.
and
Don't
all of
look
that
back.
blood, right?
Yeah, and I didn't listen to myself when we finally did pull in.
Yeah.
And I'm yelling for medics because I'm medic, and you're like, no, it's okay, he's gone, and I look back.
Yeah. We had to, I remember you and I had to part the Red Sea. There were 50,000 people in the streets in front of us.
Yeah,
And you had to,
vehicles everywhere,
Yeah.
and people, and
you were firing your 50 cal right over the tops of their head. Not going to
a
kill
little bit.
anybody.
I mostly had my pistol just shooting
Yeah.
in the air, just telling, hey, move. I
Yeah.
didn't speak somehow. I don't know what they.
Right.
trying to get them to move, and
That's right. Not going to kill anybody, but need to get the
no,
crowds out of the
just
way so we can get back to the base.
that place was crowded, dude.
And when we got back there, I helped pull Dominic off the back of the vehicle, and there was no question he was dead. And I'll just
Yeah,
say this: he was
yeah,
dead before his body hit the floorboard.
yeah. He
That's how
was.
massive the head wound was.
It was instant.
Brad, did I ever tell you that when I was in in Panama, one of the things that I did is I moved all of the wounded and all of the dead Rangers off of Rio Hato Airfield and took them back to the surgeon, and also took the body bags back to our casualty collection point. And I moved a lot of blood, and I moved a lot of dead bodies while I was in Panama. Did I ever tell you that?
No, I don't remember hearing that.
Well, this is important because when we got off the Humvees and we get notified from Lieutenant Moores that Mike Durant's helicopter's down, we need to go back out there. And one of the special operators who came back with us, huge shout out to John Mesa, who is a bold man in combat, said, "Hey, Jeff, you need to go clean this Humvee up." When I jumped off the Humvees, we didn't have running water. We just had a water buffalo and some buckets.
Mop bucket.
And I remember saying, "Guys, you don't have to do this. I won't make you do this, but I can use some help."
Well, I did help, but I didn't have to touch anything other than picking up ammo, trying to get stuff straightened out. But the flesh stuff I left to you.
Yeah.
I did dump buckets of water after buckets, trying to get some of it cleaned out.
When we were cleaning the back, the most terrifying moments of my life, hands down, was standing at the back of that Humvee with you, cleaning up Dominic Pilla's body, literally. His brain, the bone, all of it splattered everywhere on the back of that Humvee. And I remember for a moment, I remember the radio was still on. I was listening to the fight. It was going really, really bad. And I remember saying, "Just turn the radio off. I don't want to hear it right now." It was so bad. But I also remember watching you, Brad, and I watched you, who have never been around that kind of blood and bodies before. I have, and I've been around them more than once. I watched you, and that was one of the moments I was like, I can't believe what I'm seeing from this guy. He's been in the Army for maybe a year and a half, been in the Ranger Regiment for just a little while, never, ever been in a circumstance like this. And he's doing one of the most gruesome things a warrior will ever have to do in combat. And he's holding it all together, where most people who have been around for 20 or 30 years couldn't hold it together.
I put on a good fat kick. Come on, dude. I wasn't holding it in my mind, dude. There was nothing held together.
Well, by holding it together, I mean you didn't run to the corner of the airfield hangar and go hide and call it quits for the night, man. You stayed
Don't think
right
I didn't
there.
want to.
I
don't think
I
I
didn't want to. You stayed right there in the middle of the fight, and when we were cleaning the back of the Humvee up, I was simply blown away by your courage, man. So
I had an example right next to me to follow. You know what I mean? You were. I did what you did. I just followed you, dude.
And I was just watching you and trying to be a leader that was worthy of leading a guy like you in combat. I'm narrating for the listener, obviously, is what I'm doing right now, Brad, kind of the highlights of this fight. And by highlights, I'm putting highlights in air quotes because for me and you, these are the low lights of the fight. We roll back out in the city streets. I'm getting directions from the command and control helicopter in the air trying to take us at Durant's crash site. And then the helicopter says, drive down the streets, go to the burning tires. And right as soon as you get to the burning tires, if you take a right, you go to straight to the crash site. What that helicopter couldn't see is the ambush that was waiting for us down that street. Remember that?
There was pretty much every roadblock we came upon had an ambush waiting at it.
And this one,
that was a pretty big one.
That
dude.
one was rough. I remember thinking we were literally right next to the guys when they opened up on our Humvee, 10 feet away. You're totally exposed, from the waist up, sticking out of the top of the Humvee. We're 10 feet away from them, and they open up with an RPG. That makes sense. And then automatic gunfire right after that. And the RPG totally bounces off of the hood of the vehicle and explodes into the wall next to us. And to this day, I don't even know how that was possible. How could you
Dude,
miss a target that easy that big,
Well, he
that
didn't miss
close.
it. He just didn't hit it straight enough. It bounced off. Yeah, it was a little bit of a miss.
It,
Thank God for that.
yeah, it blew up in
But even
the,
still, when that thing blew up on that wall, that wasn't very far away from
no,
him.
and
I
it
was like,
was,
"How am I still here?"
yeah, the
It had to be
overpressure was
it had
so
to be it.
close that it started to lift the Humvee up for just a second before it
Yeah,
set it back down.
it was a pretty big explosion, pretty close to us.
It's the one shot that should have killed everybody on the Humvee, and and it missed us basically. It
Yeah,
should have killed
yeah,
us all, and it missed us completely. And I to this day can only give God credit for how that shot missed everybody on the vehicle, because we should have all been dead after that RPG.
yeah,
Um, so we end up having to back the convoy out of that street, come back around, and that's when we linked up with the rest of McKnight's convoy. Do you remember that?
yeah, yeah.
Because
And they were coming in, and they looked pretty beat up,
yeah,
man. Some of those vehicles, we had to stand there waiting for them to offload all the
yeah,
sensitive gear and the weapons, and
yeah,
there was at least a Humvee, one of the 5 tons I think we left there,
yeah.
through the grenade and the motor and all that. And
Yeah, so many dead bodies, so many vehicles disabled that you and I, and a handful of other guys have to transload the dead onto the good vehicles. And then Aaron Weaver and I, like you said, set thermite grenades on the engine block of one of those vehicles and on the radio gear, and burn the vehicle in the city streets because it couldn't even make it anymore back to the base. And when we linked up with those guys, they were shot to pieces and helped get those guys back. And I think at that point, that's when Cavaco was pretty seriously hit already.
yeah, I don't remember.
So now we make it back to the base. This is the second time back. Now, even more blood and more dead bodies around us. And I thought that somehow Colonel McKnight's column of vehicles had secured all of the rest of the assault force. I thought that the rest of the folks at the crash site were already on those vehicles when we got back. And that's when I learned now half of the force is still out there, and we're going to need help from the United Nations to go back out there. So we start to plan this big United Nations mission. I want to give credit at this point where credit's due. Major at the time, now retired General Craig Nixon, called me off to the side and said, Jeff, your men they're looking to you and they're scared. And you need to go talk to them because you're asking them to go back out in the city streets a third time. And going back out there the second time was bad enough. Going back out there a third time is almost too much to ask. So you need to go basically give them a little pep talk. And I don't know if you remember that talk when I jumped up on a metal folding chair and just said, all right, guys, gather around. Here's what's about to happen next. Do you remember any of that?
Kind of. I mean,
Yeah. So,
I was kind of in a haze during all that because every time we got back in, I was like, "How am I still alive? Thank God we're back!" And I just kept waiting on the rest of the guys to
yeah,
come in. I thought it was over,
so did I.
and then
Until,
it's like, "No, we got to go back." And it
yeah,
was like, "Wait a second, I can't go back. I go back out there, I'm dead. I can't go back.
that's
There's no way."
That's why you and I are doing this episode right now, Brad, because to 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 that exact point, that's exactly what was going back through my mind. If I go back out there, I'm going to get I wasn't thinking about me. I was thinking about you guys. If I go back out there, every single guy on my Humvee is going to get killed. You can't possibly ask us to go back out there. And then they say, "Hey Jeff, you guys got to get ready to go back out there." And I'm like, "We're all going to die. Every one of us are going to
Yeah,
die tonight."
yeah,
Um,
yeah. That was what everybody was thinking the same thing.
Let's go to the middle of the night. This is, without a doubt, the bravest events that I've ever seen in a firefight. And Brad, just so you know, many deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq after Somalia, Panama, and Desert Storm before Somalia. I've seen killing, I've seen bravery, but not like I've seen from you. So we tuck into this huge force, Pakistani tank, Malaysian armored personnel carriers, 10th Mountain and Humvees, and we're on the same Humvees that are already shot to pieces at this point. And we roll back out there. I remember we turned on National Street, and I thought no one in their right mind would be crazy enough to fire at this huge convoy with all of these vehicles and
A
all of
lot of
these
guns.
weapons. And then as soon as we turned the corner, National Street became like a 4th of July with fireworks going off in the left and right everywhere we were. And I thought to myself, here we go again.
Yeah.
We're on National Street. I don't even remember how long we've been on National Street. And this is where you really, really blew me away, man. First thing that happens, well, lots of things happen, but one of the first notable things that happen is you take a ricochet from a round across your forehead and are bleeding into your eye, right?
Yeah, but I still don't know exactly what hit me. Something hit me.
Okay, so I want to tell the list. I want the listener to hear what you just said. We're driving down the road. You and I, at this point, have been in and out of the city streets twice. And at this point, now we're getting hit like the 4th of July, fireworks going off left and right. And on National Street, you take a round across the forehead. That alone should have killed you. That alone would have taken most guys out of the fight. And now you're bleeding down into your eye a little bit, which of course makes it
It
harder
made
to shoot
Yeah, it made it a
from.
little hard to see what you're looking at. But
Yeah.
when that happened though, that happened at the same time that something hit me in the hand. And my hand, I had my hands on the back of the 50, and my hand goes this way, my head goes that way, my K-pop flips back, and my nods are off. I'm like, what the hell was that? And yeah, my hand burned. I asked you, hey, can
I
you look at this? Tell me
yeah.
what the hell's going on. It was burning. It was like somebody was sticking burning needles into my hand. I was like, what the heck?
I remember this like it was yesterday. RPG goes off, hits the wall right next to us. It's just a few feet away. The flaming hot shrapnel peppers you, and it hits you in the right hand because it hits the right side of the vehicle. And when you say this, I say, Brad, jump down in the vehicles. Let me take a look at that hand. And I want to do a little bit of first aid on you. And I remember there's two things about this that I still carry with me. I still remember what this smelt like. And I still remember what this sounded like because when you fell down into the, not fell down, when you got down into the Humvees next to me, you were holding your right hand. It was sizzling like bacon in a frying pan. And
Okay, I don't remember that.
and there was still smoke and there was still a smell coming off of it, like the smell of burning meat. And I was like, Brad, I'm going to put a bandage on that hand, but first I got to pour some water out of my canteen. This is not sterile. I got to pour some water on it to try to put knock the flaming hot metal down a little
Yeah,
bit
it was.
and bandage your hand up. And this is the bravest thing I've ever heard, I've ever seen, the bravest act I've ever heard in my life. I was like, Brad, it takes 2 hands to run a 50 cal machine gun.
For most people.
That's a massive gun with a lot of meat behind it. And now you're bleeding into your eye. You've got shrapnel that's still burning in your right hand. And I said, Brad, why don't you just take a seat in the back of the Humvee? I'll put somebody else on the 50 cal. And I will never forget to my dying day what you said to me. Tell everybody what you said.
I don't remember, dude. I just know I said I got it. I'm good.
You said to me, no, Sergeant, it's my gun. I've got it. It's my responsibility. And I
Yeah.
almost punched you in the face, man, because I was trying to tell you, Brad, there's no way you can shoot. There's
No,
no
I
way
did
you can
though. I
fight.
shot it, dude.
Yes.
I found a way. I did okay with it.
I tried multiple times to tell you, Brad, don't get back up on that 50. Somebody else can go run the 50 cal tonight. You've done enough. Just sit in the back. And multiple times you said to me, no, Sergeant, it's my job. It's my gun. I got it. And you jumped back on the gun and you stayed on the gun all night long. And that was the
Yeah.
moment I said, this is the bravest man
It
I've ever
got
seen
hard
in my
though.
life.
There was a couple times where I thought about letting Moynihan up there because it was kind of hard with the one hand not really.
Yeah. Tell
I
everybody.
could figure it out, but
I was going to say, tell everybody what it took just to change out ammo cans and to recock that gun with one hand. Now with only one
it's
hand.
a little tough. A lot of guys can't do it with one hand. I did though, and my hand still worked, but during the night, dude, the longer it went on, that pain in my hand just kept traveling up my arm all the way to my shoulder, so my whole arm pretty much wouldn't work. But I made it work. I would pull back on it, and I would like get it with my elbow and pull back the charge.
By
I
the
did what
next
it took.
by the next morning, you're using your right forearm and your left hand to cock the gun every time you replace the ammo cans
Yeah, yeah.
because you've got no real use of your right hand. And
No, but it worked.
I'm thinking to myself, anybody in their right mind would have jumped off of the 50, got in the back
I
of the
know it
Humvee.
probably would have been the right thing to do, but I was still doing okay, man. I could handle it.
Yeah, you could handle it. Wow, did you handle it? And I this is the point where I realized this is one of the bravest acts I think I've ever seen in my life. And then we start to get hit, remember this, from the building right next to us, from the rooftop. Remember
Dude,
that?
I remember because I got burnt. The brass, I see brass bouncing off the
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 top of the
top,
Humvee.
and I'm like, that's not coming for me. There's no one else up there. So what the? And I look up, and yeah, it's raining down on me. And when I looked up, it's landing down my shirt, and it gets into the
Flaming hot
with the big. I
brasses.
can't get it out
Yeah.
because the hot brass is burning me. I because I got that vest on. I'm like, crap, crap, crap.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm looking. I'm like, what am I going to do about this guy? I can't. I think Bonnet might have tried to rake him with some.
With the Mark 19.
Yeah, he might have a few times, but he couldn't get to him either because that he was too close to where he couldn't lob him on it.
Yeah.
So
So that's what I want the listener to hear. We are 10 feet away from the building. The building is 2 or 3 stories tall. We're getting hit from the rooftop, but there's literally no way to get a weapon to that rooftop from where we're at. There's
I just had
absolutely
my pistol, but the guy that was up there was at least smart enough not to lean over. He would just lean the gun over and squeeze. And luckily, I don't think he even knew we were there. He was aiming at the guys behind us mostly. That's why I said I can't let this go, man. I got to do something.
So this moment is etched in my memory forever. We're getting hit from this rooftop. I feel it, you feel it, everybody around us feels it, but there's no way we can get our guns on that rooftop to engage the guy because he's over the side of the roof. And that's when I said, Brad, I need you to throw a hand grenade. And you're right-handed, and your right hand has a bandage and flaming hot shrapnel in there. I need you to throw a hand grenade on that rooftop. But you and I had a little grenade tossing conversation before we did this, about cooking off a grenade. If
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you don't
yeah.
cook it off, let me tell you what's going to
I
happen.
know, I know.
So can you
But
just can you describe that before you throw the grenade? Can you
well,
describe the conversation you and I had before you had to throw that grenade?
yeah, and I knew how to cook them off. I mean, that's what they always teach us and train us, and we've thrown them in practice and training and all that, but not in a real life situation. It's a little different. And where I was scared to do it because, I mean, I think I knew I had to. I knew that I had to, but I'm thinking to myself, I'm standing. I can't get it like a jump start. I
No,
can't.
can't
And
run
I've
and
got
it
this
can't
big
run and
vest
jump.
on,
Yeah,
this big vest, and I'm like, and those grenades are heavy. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm gonna cook it off. I'm gonna throw it. I'm like, I better get it up there because if it doesn't make it up, if it comes back down, I gotta stand here and make sure that it's not gonna bounce off the building and come back and kill us all.
that was
Because
our
those things can kill you. Even if it
that's
landed outside
yeah.
the Jeep, we'd have been screwed up. But I'm like, okay. So I made up my mind I'm gonna do this, and I put everything into throwing that. I mean, every ounce of strength I had. And I'm watching that thing going up, and I'm like, come on, come on, come on, come on. And
And
it just
like it's in slow motion, right?
barely creeped over. I'm like, oh, thank God. And then I forgot, I think I didn't have
Yeah.
earplugs. So boom. And then it's like, crap. That kind of rocked me a little bit. Even up there, that was close enough. It's a loud grenade, man.
We had a conversation, you and I, right before you threw the grenade, exactly like you're describing it. And I remember saying, Brad, listen, man, that building is so close to us. If you throw that grenade and it doesn't go off right away, all he has to do is pick it up and drop it over the side, and it's going to land right on top of us.
Yeah.
So I need you to cook this off. Now, I want the listener to understand the average grenade has about a 4 to 5 second fuse. After you pop the spoon, 4 to 5 seconds later, the grenade is going to blow up. And I remember saying, Brad, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to count after you pop the spoon. And when I tell you, you throw, and don't you dare throw 1 second early, because if you do, he's just going to pick it off of the roof and drop it right back on top of us. And to perfection, you pop the spoon. I count 1,000, 2,000, throw. And I watch the grenade, like you, in slow motion go
Oh, you
over
could
the
see
roof.
it.
And then as soon as the grenade crossed the lip of the roof, boom, it
Boom.
blows up.
Yeah.
And there's no more
No
problems.
more fight. No more
That's right.
fire up there.
No more problems from the rooftop for the rest of the
Yeah.
night. And I was like, that guy, Brad, just did this with flaming hot shrapnel using his right hand and put the grenade perfectly where it was
Dude,
supposed to be
that was
with
not
perfect
easy.
timing.
That wouldn't be easy to do under the best
I don't think
circumstances.
I've ever been that accurate with a grenade, let alone with a wounded hand when you threw that
No,
grenade.
that's, hey, that's another one of those God things, man. It had to
I
be.
totally agree. I could spend the next hour, but we don't have that kind of time. So I want to kind of get to the next morning. You and I stay on those city streets. You stay on the gun. And all night long, I was thinking to myself, this guy's been in the Army for maybe a year and a half. He's been in the Ranger Regiment for maybe a year. This is his second real firefight in his life. And I've never seen anything so brave in my life. We're getting ready to leave. And if you remember, I get the call from Larry Moore's, hey, all of the rest of the vehicles are going to go down the road. All of the assault forces loaded up on the vehicles. The last two vehicles out are going to be Larry Moore's and me and you. And I call up to you and I say, hey, Brad, we're the last vehicle out of the city streets. I want you to take your gun, face it to the rear, pull rear security, because all of the rest of the convoy in front of us will take care of the front of the vehicle. And we start driving away. And you remember when you called down to me from the turret and told me what you saw running down the streets after us?
Yeah, I'm like, we got some guys coming. You're like, light them up.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, they're our guys, dude. I could tell by their just the shapes of them, that what the equipment. I just knew it was our guys.
If it wasn't for you, Brad, I would have driven away and all of those guys would have had to go out on foot. We're driving away and you call down to me and you say, hey, Sergeant, there's some guys running down the streets. And my first reaction is, they must be Somalis. Everybody's supposed to be on the vehicles in front of us. Light them up, Brad. And you say, no, Sergeant, those are our guys. I look around me because the vehicle's shot to pieces, rearview mirrors all busted up. And sure enough, there's a dozen of our assault force running down the city streets with eyes as big as saucers because we're driving away.
Yeah, they were way back there too. They were probably a good half a mile, well, quarter mile
Yeah.
at least away, half mile.
And Larry Morris, I couldn't get him on the radio, so I drove up to him really fast and I said, sir, we got to go back. There's still guys in the streets. And we bounced into each other and bounced into garbage on the side of the road, driving back into the Target building, back into the Target, when those guys dove in the back of our Humvees. And I mean, so many guys dove in the back of the Humvees that there was literally no place for them. And they were just hanging on by their hands and their feet were dragging across the ground from the back of the Humvee as we drove back to the base the next morning. And when I got off the Humvees, to this day, and this is 30 years later, Brad, what you did that night on those city streets on that 50 cal is the bravest act I've ever seen in combat. And I've seen a lot of valor in combat. But man, you blew me away.
There was a lot of that going on. You just didn't get to see it. There was a lot of other turret gunners, a lot of other soldiers out there doing stuff. People that people don't even hear about,
Yeah.
man. It's makes me a little sad for that stuff. I mean, the fact that you're sharing my stuff and story, I appreciate it, but there's so many guys that just they don't get mentioned in anything.
I put only a couple of guys from our squad in for Valorous Awards, and I put you in for the Silver Star when we got back from Somalia. It took 28 years before your Silver Star was approved. And I think you may be the youngest Ranger I've ever seen in my life to ever receive the Silver Star. But I'm telling you, man, you deserved it. You probably deserved the Distinguished
No,
Service
no,
Cross.
dude. I'll tell you that was I had a friend who went through basic and airborne and RIP and stuff with me, and he was a pack clerk,
Uh-huh.
and he told me, he's like, dude, he's like, your name's on the list to get a Silver Star. I'm like, what? It was down to like 12 guys or
Yeah.
something. I was still on the list. I was like, what? And then I think they gave 6 or something.
Yeah.
But I was a PFC, dude. Ain't what the heck is who's this guy? What's he? It's all right though. I don't ding awards, but it's nice to be recognized, but it's all of us that should be recognized. You know, the guys that people haven't heard about, man.
Yeah.
It's
Everybody on those Humvees blew me away that night, but you above everybody else. When
Well, that's because I was above you, dude. I was
when,
there. You got to
when
see it.
I put the awards in, I put you and Dominic Pilla both in for the Silver Star because of what I watched you guys do. And Pilla was dead within the first 30 minutes of the fight. You stayed on top of that Humvee, wounded multiple times, and probably the only guy I've ever seen in my life who can fire that massive 50 cal machine gun with one hand because of the shrapnel. And to this
That was
day,
like 1.5 hands.
yeah,
The hand was still there. It didn't. It was still
yeah,
there.
to this day, it's some of the bravest acts I've ever seen in a
Yeah.
firefight.
Well, thank you, dude. I just my mind was made up after Pila went. I felt responsible for that because I was on the big gun. I was supposed to keep everybody safe, and that's why when you kept telling me, let someone else up there, I'm like, no, no. If anybody else is going to get hit, it's going to be me. I'm not letting someone else take a bullet for me.
I, I
So
I'm going to stop right there. I want people to hear my interpretation of what you just said. I know what that means. You know what that means, but the listener may have missed what that means. After Dominic Pilla was killed, and I know how much you look up to Pilla, and I know how bad this hurt, devastated you. After Dominic Pilla was killed, you made the decision: if anybody else is going to die on these Humvees, it's going to be me, because I have the big gun and I have the big responsibilities. And that's probably why you have, in my mind, the greatest. That night, you is your what you did is the single greatest acts of valor I've ever seen in my life.
there was plenty other ones. You just didn't get to see it because it was like a couple hundred yards away from
Yeah.
us, dude. I'm telling you, there was plenty of that going around. I'm sure of it.
When we finally made it back to that United Nations base, the Pakistani soccer stadium, that's when I realized just how bad. I thought it was just us. That's when I realized just how bad the whole force had been shot up. I saw all of those body bags lay down in a row. I saw all of the medics trying to keep everybody alive. Huge shout out to Doc Stanfield, who was treating people all the way up until the next day. PFC, who had multiple guys with, litter urgent, multiple guys who are hanging on to life, and they're all around him, and he's trying to treat one at the same time he's telling somebody else what to do with another one. But when we pulled into the stadium the next day, that's when I realized just how bloody this fight really was.
Yeah, because I hadn't heard from anybody because up in the turret, I can't hear it. I don't know what's going on anywhere else.
And when we jumped off of those Humvees, I remember looking at our squad and thinking, how is anybody alive right now? How on earth did any one of us survive last night? And to this day, I've always said it is solely because of God's grace that any of us are still alive today. I should be in Arlington National Cemetery, not some of those other guys.
Yeah, that's the same thing we all were thinking.
Brad, if there was one guy that I would have, if I was the guy writing the book or making the movie about Black Hawk Down, if there was one guy that I would make the central character in the movie, it would have been you.
No, man, that's just because, like I said, you didn't see everything else. There was so much in that because that for what we saw, it was so intense. But other people saw they could have seen worse. I mean,
Yeah.
it was bad everywhere. There was nowhere safe out on those streets. There was nowhere safe.
But what I saw was you, and I watched you all night long. And to this day, I've been thinking this is a guy with very little experience, very little training, first real massive firefight, and he is absolutely undaunted by it. He's able to hang on and to keep running that gun all night long. And literally, we're still on the gun when we pulled back in the next morning.
Yeah, well, that's what I was trained to do, man.
Yeah. I'm going to end this broadcast by just saying this to you one more time. Brad, when I go to my death, there's a few things that I will look back and be very, very proud of. And one of those things is being able to serve with guys like you. It has been one of my greatest honors, man. So thank you for coming on this episode and being a guest on Unbeatable with me.
Thanks.
I have been longing for 30 years to have this conversation with Brad. because I wanted you and everyone in the world to know what I think about this incredible warrior. I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for the guy standing right above me, completely exposed from the waist up to enemy fire from every direction all night long. Brad, thank you for what you did on those city streets. I want to thank all of the listeners that stay connected with us. For those of you that are subscribing to this podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platforms, thank you for being so loyal. And not just for our loyal listeners, I also want to thank the people that are connected to us on social media. You know, we're pretty much everywhere on social media. If you are looking, you can find us, just search for @Unbeatable Podcast. But one of those people that are very connected with us on social media is our fan of the week this week. It's Matthew Henderson. And Matthew, I just wanted to say thanks for staying plugged in. Thanks for being so engaged. Thank you for being part of this amazing group of people that stay connected to the Unbeatable Podcast. The pinnacle of this group is what we call the Unbeatable Army. It's a email list, but it's a lot more than the email list. It's our way of communicating with the listeners during the week. And if you want to be part of the Unbeatable Army, it's totally free. Just simply go over to unbeatablearmy.com. I'm going to say it again. Brad, thank you for being my guest today. Thank you for what you did above me on those city streets. And next week, I can't wait to bring you another guest who this story should have been in the movie Black Hawk Down, but it wasn't. See you right back here next week.